Hello everyone, I am Lydia, and today I'm on the floor. I don't know if you guys are like me and you prefer sitting on the floor sometimes, but I do. Sometimes I just prefer sitting on the floor. I'm also a grown adult who still sits crisscross applesauce. I actually prefer to sit crisscross applesauce. It's kind of funny calling it crisscross applesauce. But I say crisscross, you know? And that's just the most comfortable sometimes, you know? Anyway. So today I wanted to talk about my mental clarity after being out of toxic mold. Because it's been quite a journey. And if you don't know, toxic mold is kind of just this all-encompassing type of illness, really. It affects so much of your health. Especially if you're in it long term, like I was. I was in it for, I think, 4 or 5 years. It's hard to remember when the starting date was per se, but it was a long time, and it affected my health severely, and it felt like hell. It really did. It felt like hell on earth, and that's not to sugarcoat it. Every waking moment I asked myself, how do I escape? Every waking moment, and even sometimes in my sleep. It was rough. It was really, really rough. And before toxic mold, throughout my life, I would say, pretty mentally sharp. My memory was, I would say, above average. Not to brag, not to pat myself on the back, but it was. I sometimes felt like if I could just do something to sharpen my mind even more, I could have had, like, not a photogenic memory. I never felt like it was to that level, but I did feel like I could have that memory, that type of memory where you could remember every single moment of your life, or not maybe every single moment of your life, but like until the point where you started to regain memories or build memories as an infant. I really felt like I could remember everything if I just, like, I don't know, if I just was a little bit more mentally clear, because I was already really good at remembering dates and people and conversations word for word. I knew exactly what was said, and I could even remember, like, what I wore to school on a random day, you know. I had a strong memory, and I also felt like my memory was very tangible is not the right word, but it's the only word coming to my mind right now. I felt like if somebody asked me a question, I could figure out the answer within my memory, if that makes sense. And I was very, very mentally sharp in other ways too. Like, I was a very logical type of a person. Like, let's make the most logical decision at any given moment with any situation, and I felt like I was capable of doing a lot mentally. I don't know. Like, it is interesting though, because I wasn't the best at, like, math or science or, like, academic work, but I was very good at, like, memory, and I even made YouTube channels growing up, and it's not to say that I spoke perfectly on camera, but I definitely knew how to get my thoughts across very easily and clearly, and get from point A to point B when I had a topic that I really wanted to talk about. And I knew how to get there, and I knew in my mind how to create sort of like a timeline, or like I was very good at timelines, like very good at like how much time it would take to get from here to here mentally. Yeah. And also with videos, knowing like, okay, I want to hit this point, this point, this point in that order, even though I don't have it written down, it's just all in my mind, and I was able to execute that. And the only time that I would ever really notice that not being its strongest is if I wasn't eating enough, which occasionally would happen, because I really had no idea how many calories to consume in a day. Like, I didn't really even understand what that meant growing up. And so I, like, as a teenager especially, like, I just completely had no idea how much food to consume. And so I didn't take care of myself nutrition wise. And so that sometimes would affect me mentally. But besides that, I felt like I was very mentally sharp. And it's just really interesting because toxic mold really had an effect on everything. And I do mean every aspect of my life. It affected it to some degree. And my health was at its lowest during toxic mold. And it affected my mental clarity greatly. The first, because I think I got out of toxic mold. I don't know when I got, like, when mold officially started. That's a hard time to decipher. But when we got out of toxic mold, like, officially, it was in March, or maybe it was, no, I think it was March, or maybe it was late February of 2022. And then we were going through a lot of stress, trying to find a place to live. We lived with a neighbor for a short while. And so, but it is kind of interesting how, like, even when you're going through a stressful situation, your body's still healing. Your body's always healing. And that really just dawned on me recently, especially after being homeless, not directly related to toxic mold, but sort of an aftermath sort of a thing. But I had gone through so much stress then, and I still continued to heal. So I say all that to say that starting from early March 2022, it took a long time for me to begin posting on YouTube again, because I had just given up and quit on YouTube, really, because I was so mentally out of it that, well, one, looking in the mirror was hard. I didn't look in the mirror for years. Literally years. And I mean, with that, even talking to people was extremely challenging. I felt like I was dazed. I felt like I was drugged. I don't know if you can say that on YouTube, but I really do feel like I felt that way the entire time that I was in toxic mold. And it just took everything out of me. It makes you feel like you are daydreaming all the time. It's like depersonalization, derealization, and just a complete detachment from the world. Really, that's what it did to me. And so with that, it definitely took a toll on my mental clarity. I couldn't do YouTube, let alone talking to people or anything else. I mean, it was just really hard to form any thoughts at all. And so in the beginning, when I was out of toxic mold, I kind of had YouTube on my mind. Like, I want to do that one day. I hope I'm able to do that one day. It was really hard for me to imagine what life outside of toxic mold was going to be like at that point, because for so long I really thought that I was never going to escape. Which, you know, now being out of toxic mold, I don't say that to scare you, because you can escape. You can, and you can even heal enough while you're in it to escape. That's what we had to do. But yeah, it was really rough while being in it. And so the first several months being out of it, it was like, I felt like a prisoner let out of prison for a crime I didn't commit. And it just felt like so detached from reality. I felt so detached. And so I couldn't film YouTube videos. I couldn't, really talk to anybody. My memory during toxic mold at my worst, I felt like I didn't know anything, even myself. It was like I was a zombie. So, like practically non-existent. If you told me something, it was like, maybe they said that. I don't know what they said. Like, truly. And even looking back at my time in toxic mold, it's like, it feels like a blur. It feels like this lifetime. It didn't even feel like years were necessarily passing. It just felt like this big chunk of life that was taken from me, really. So, yeah. And I worked my way up to being able to make TikToks. That took a while. March to, let's see, I think I started making TikToks October 2022. And in October 2022 is when I stopped keto. I did keto, strict keto, from July. Oh no, I didn't stop doing keto in October. I stopped doing keto in November. I did it from July, beginning of July, to maybe the middle of November. July. Me counting, trying to count months. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, okay, so I was in the middle of doing keto when I started to do TikTok, and that was really hard for me. I felt so detached from looking at the camera. I only had started to be looking at myself in the mirror. I only started to do that at that point. And it was just very awkward for me. But I knew that it was such a fun outlet for me when I was a teenager, and I watched YouTube throughout toxic mold. I was very, very fortunate to have internet through that time, because if I didn't, I don't know what I would have done with myself, because that's literally all I physically could do was stare at a screen. And it was kind of nice because I was able to like control what I was watching, a little bit. So I could, sometimes if I felt mentally clear enough, I could inspire myself a little bit and give myself hope by looking up videos that were inspiring or that depicted a reality in which I sought after so badly but didn't know was possible for myself. So that's kind of what I did during toxic mold, a large part of it, and research. When I was mentally clear enough, I researched, especially in the beginning of toxic mold. Oh boy, I was researching like crazy, and so was my mom, with our doctor as well when we had her. 2020 really messed that up because we were getting worse, and my doctor had to help with the COVID stuff, so it was a little rough, but and we did continue our research when we were mentally able to, and it helped me be able to heal, so in the very end, so that was good. But yeah, I mean, I was just so mentally out of it. It was like a zombie. And so, as time progressed, I was able to film, I was able to do a little bit more for myself, taking care of myself more, all of that. And I still notice big changes with myself to this day, especially mentally, but I mean physically as well, actually, especially energy wise. I'm only increasing in energy really day by day, but of course healing is never linear. It's never a straight line, so some days you'll have these dips where you think like, oh my gosh, am I regressing, what's going on? But I have been healing pretty rapidly, so that's pretty awesome. I will just say that now, being, what is that, 2 years, more than 2 years out of toxic mold. Wow, it's really weird thinking that it's been 2 years, almost 2 years and a half. Sorry, I gotta get my water. Sometimes just cold water is just the most refreshing. Anyway, now being almost 2.5 years out of toxic mold, it is like night and day. Truly, it is like night and day. And for the longest time, I felt like I couldn't, like everybody could tell that something was wrong with me or something was off with me. I felt that way, although even when I was in the absolute worst of my illness of toxic mold, a lot of people didn't notice at all, which is odd. I think it just goes to show that even when we think that everybody can notice something about us, a lot of the times no one can. But now being that far out of toxic mold, it's like night and day. I'm able to film YouTube videos. I mean, I'm able to film for 50 minutes, which is, I don't know if that's really a flex. It might be just kind of like, really, you talk to a camera for 50 minutes? It's kind of a weird flex, but okay. But that is a big flex for me, especially with how often I wished I could do YouTube again and not knowing if I ever would. And here I am able to film for extended periods of time. And in the beginning, I really could only do TikTok because I knew it was short form. I knew in the beginning, I didn't even show my face. I mean, it was a lot to even just compile a video. And I would post like nature videos or whatever, and that was a lot to do because it took mental clarity to even edit and post and upload and just make it make sense, and then leading up to me making videos talking a little bit, and I didn't feel comfortable at first even talking about my story. I just felt like it would just be this jumbled mess because that's how it felt to me. Um, Especially since, you know, in the past I was so used to being a person who had a memory that was so clear, you know, and a mind that was so clear that if something happened to me, I could relay it. This is what happened. This is what happened in the correct order. And after being out of toxic mold, it felt like everything was just such a jumble, and it felt like this extended blur of torture, truly. But it's truly amazing how much I've healed since then. My memory is not like it used to be, but it is, I would say it's on par with maybe like normal. I don't know, I think it's maybe average. I think I have a pretty decent memory, you know. Sometimes I do forget like what I was talking about, but I usually pick it right back up. I'd say maybe the part that still bothers me the most is that I'm not as clear and there's a word I'm trying to think of. Like, I can't think of words that I'm trying to think of sometimes. And it especially doesn't help because I kind of speak using energy. I think we all do. We all speak using energy because words are energy, but we all speak how do I put this? Like, when I'm speaking, like, I usually speak with a energy goal in mind. Like, oh, this is the thing I'm trying to convey. How do I get there with the right words? Like, how do I convey that energy with the right words? And it's like, sometimes it's hard for me to think of the right words to convey what I'm trying to say. And that's okay. But it's also something that I've had to learn over the years of like not trying to compare myself to my teenage self, because like, yeah, I was in toxic mold for 4 to 5 years. Before that, I was deeply, deeply depressed. And I'm sure there's like a half in there somewhere, you know? And it's like, okay, like I shouldn't expect myself to be the same person that I was when I was 19 or 20. I'm 26 now. Like, I'm a different person. I've learned life lessons, life events have changed me that maybe shouldn't have, you know, I don't know, but they did, and they happened, and now I'm a different person, you know, so it's like I really shouldn't compare myself to that person. And so maybe this new memory and this new way of speaking is really, you know, what I should be leaning into. And so that's kind of where I'm at internally, you know, emotionally, I guess, about my healing process. Is like I'm just learning who I am as a person now and not trying to get back to where I was then. And I think I feel that way on almost every level, not to try to compare myself to who I was. Oh, my dog's coming in. Hi, Sophie. Hey, you come here? I don't think you will be able to see her. I'm sorry. But she's in a lot of my other videos if you want to see my dog, Sophie. And she's on my TikTok if you scroll a little bit. But she's helped me a lot in my healing journey. So I think comparison is really not the best, but I have grown a lot and healed a lot since then. And I mean, even just being a year out of toxic mold, I remember being very, very amazed by the mental clarity that I had, especially with how out of it I was. And a lot of people might never don't just burp, did you hear that? A lot of people might never experience being in toxic mold for that long or having symptoms that severe. Some people might, you know? I mean, it feels terrible no matter how much toxic mold you have. So, you know, not to lessen anybody's symptoms, but just to give you hope, you can heal. And my doctor was truly wonderful, and I was very blessed to have her. Not everybody's so lucky, and I do realize that. But we only had her for a short time. And she said something that really stuck with me. She said that the body has an amazing way of healing itself. And that just really carried me through, truly, because I had to remind myself that my body knows what it's doing. Even though it felt like my body was completely shutting down and it's like it just couldn't keep up, it knew what to do. And it will know what to do. And immediately when it was out of toxic mold, it knew what to do. We just can't give up, you know? And now I'm able to make videos. And even though, yes, sometimes I do forget a word or two, or my mind trails off a little bit, there are days where I am on it, you know, where I'm remembering the words that I'm trying to think of, and I'm coming across clearly and sharp, and I can create a timeline or work through a list and do it thoroughly, you know. But there are also days where I'm not so much like that. I'm also recovering from a flu right now, so that's not helping entirely. I do feel a little strange. My past few videos, I felt like a little odd in them, but that's okay. That is okay. And it does give me hope that, who knows, maybe in a year from now, I will be consistently on it and sharp and completely mentally with it. But I'm already happy with where I am in my progress right now. And yeah, so that is that. I hope it at least gave you guys some hope if you have toxic mold. Because you can heal from toxic mold. You absolutely can. When I was in toxic mold, I still do. I belong to a lot of toxic mold groups, but they were beneficial, but also kind of rough to be in. And I couldn't be active in there all the time in these groups because the things that they would say in these groups were so frightening to me. Sometimes. I mean, you're hearing people's horror stories that sometimes are worse than yours or on par with yours, and it just makes you feel hopeless. But people would say, well, I don't truly believe that you can ever heal from toxic mold. I'm like, I was like, that can't be true. That can't be true. And I will try my hardest to make sure that isn't true. Although many days I did believe it. But I'm here to say that it's possible. It's very possible to heal from toxic mold. And in fact, it's very say, old noggin sometimes. It's very possible to heal from toxic mold naturally, using natural ingredients. I talk a lot about how I do not recommend activated charcoal, but instead bentonite clay as a binder for toxic mold. I talk a lot about this type of stuff, or I did talk a lot about this stuff on my Thoughts of Moss YouTube channel, or not YouTube channel, this is that YouTube channel, Thoughts of Moss TikTok channel. I don't talk as much about toxic mold anymore. Trying to figure out how I want to talk about it, but anyway, you can do it naturally. You don't have to put poisons and toxins in your body. It's possible, very possible. And I'm living proof. I might not be, this, super genius that as a teenager I had hoped that I could build up to being. But I'm also a person who's been through a lot. And I came out being even more resilient than I was before. So there's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to be proud of for all of us who've gone through toxic mold. A lot. I mean, it is a battle. A battle that not a whole lot of people talk about. And not a whole lot of doctors even know about. It's like having to completely heal yourself from an unknown illness all on your own. It's kind of a wild thing, but it's possible. It's very possible. And joining groups and stuff, it does help in the sense that you do get a lot of good information in there, especially if you have questions and stuff. I mean, a lot of good information, but that's where I'm at mentally. I can look at myself in the mirror now. I can speak clearly to you. I can have conversations with people. My social anxiety is maybe better than it was pre-toxic mold, if I'm being honest. I used to have pretty severe social anxiety as a teenager and then throughout toxic mold. And more recently, I've grown to be far better. So in a lot of ways, I'm better than I was before toxic mold. I'm just a different person. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about the topic. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.